Tian.
Resume the recording. Is that okay with everyone?
Perfect.
Okay. All right. So since we have a small group, I mean, I guess the first question is to figure out from your end, Charles, I know you have been kind of a stalwart attendee to these meetings. Do you think it's a kind of the late reminders that might lead to people not being able to attend in time? You think it's a late reminder issue? For you, Rachel, this is your third meeting, right?
So I think you're keeping better count than me, yes.
Yeah, okay, just because I have the participant list. So, you know, any thoughts you have, Tian, I know from your end, you've saved them directly in your calendar, obviously, but maybe I send the reminders a week before. You know, we've set these meetings for the last Tuesday of every month. So maybe sort of more regular reminders would be useful, do you think? It is quite odd for us to only have 4 people. We normally have at least 10, and I did have about 18 people who had registered when I checked yesterday. So it is, and so any tips, any thoughts from the 3 of you would be appreciated.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Maaza. I mean, I think also there's, and hello, Rachel, hello, Charles. I think there's a need for, perhaps we can go back to the drawing board and really look at how the frequency in which we reach out to folks, but also look at some kind of supportive social media strategy that highlights the existence of this group, because I do think it's still extremely important to have a group like this, specifically focused on Africa, that also, you know, falls in line with PVA Global, but also really to set and shape our African agenda. I guess there's also recognition that, you know, a lot of folks, at least in my circles, are at the World Health Assembly and doing, you know, some work around that. So that could be a contributing factor. But I do think, you know, we can circle back and re-look at the engagement strategy, especially for countries that we have no membership in. And I think by extension, then that might see an uptake in our numbers participating in these calls from across the continent. But I do think it's absolutely, it still remains an absolutely critical platform.
Okay, well, I will take advantage of you, Rachel and Charles. And just before we go on, sorry, Charles and Rachel, have you met Tian? I think, Charles, you and Tian have definitely been on a call together at least once.
Yeah, I think once, yeah.
Okay. And Rachel, have you, we should do just a quick intro then, because I realize that you might not know each other. So Charles, I know I ask you to do this every time. Could you quickly intro yourself, and then Rachel as well, and Tian?
No problem. I'm Charles. I'm a policy officer at the London School of Economics. I'm working on a African Health Observatory platform, which is there to promote evidence-informed policymaking on the continent. So it's good to be here.
Thanks, Charles. Rachel?
Hi, let me put my video on, show my face. My name is Rachel Nicholson. I'm normally the Great Lakes researcher at Amnesty in Nairobi, but I'm currently leading on our project on access to vaccines in East Africa. Tian, I think I saw you on a call with my colleague Irungu last week, but we've not. But if we're talking about trying to expand reach in different countries as well, I'd be interested in how we could collaborate on that as well, because we've been doing a bit of outreach and trying to identify new people working in different countries in East Africa. So maybe there'd be a possibility there.
Excellent. Thanks, Rachel. And just to say, you know, before we go on, Tian, for you to intro yourself, I would say that we do have a pretty, you know, and I know that Tian always says that we can't just share our email lists because there are rules around that. But, you know, when this process started, and obviously African Alliance had a wider group of contacts in East Africa from some of the HIV work, and many of those people had shifted to working on COVID. And thanks to people like Onesmus at IANASO and others, we do have quite a broad list of contacts in East Africa. So Tian, maybe offline, you and I can brainstorm on, I know there's, you know, the question really now is, how to get those people, especially those that are not PVA members. So Charles, for example, I know that you attend, the policy and advocacy group at the People's Vaccine Alliance and the campaigns and media group as well. And those people, once people are official members of the PVA, they do get the regular weekly updates from the PVA coordinator on everything that's going on at PVA. And I think that tends to keep people quite engaged. I think we probably, at African Alliance and coordinating the Africa side, need to do more of that will include even the people who are not PVA members. So in terms of the names, Rachel, there are quite a few people across East Africa that are on our PVA Africa contact list. Some of those are also on kind of the storytellers list that we've been developing with the campaigns and media group, people we can reach out to for either media opportunities or short films or campaign videos. So Tian, maybe we can just chat offline on what the process is to kind of share that, that list internally among everyone. But I'll let you go ahead, Tian, and just intro yourself briefly.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Maaza. Yes, Rachel had a great conversation with the Irungu and Kumba and a few other colleagues a while ago. So I'm Tian Johnson from the African Alliance. I also serve on the South African Ministerial Advisory Committee on COVID vaccines, as well as the Working Group on Vaccine Hesitancy. And together with Dr. Monique Wasuna from the NDI in Nairobi, I co-chaired the community engagement work of the African CDC Vaccine Delivery Alliance. I also serve in various capacities on the Robert Carr Fund, and we fund regional and global networks who work to serve inadequately served populations. And we've really been doing, most of our programming, I would say, about 90% has really focused on COVID since the onset of the pandemic. And we really want to focus and increase the strength and visibility and reach, of course, of PVA Africa, because I think in the context, of decolonization and a shifting development landscape, it's really critical for us to make the PVA work for all of us. Thanks, Maaza.
Thanks, Tian. And Tian, I just realized that since the hosting has been kicked to you, just keep your ears open in case people are sitting in the waiting room. I'm not sure if you get a ping when that happens, but just keep your ears peeled, eyes peeled. So yes, I know all of you, I think, and Rachel, I realized as we were talking that you and I had that brief communication about Matt Hancock, and then he ended up losing his job before he started it. So did you all go ahead with, did you also put that on the back burner once he lost his appointment?
We did put out I didn't share it. We did end up putting out a short press release. After these things go through so many levels of review, it wasn't quite as strong as we'd hoped for, but we did say something, but it was just before it was announced that he lost his job. But either way, really, it was what a sideshow, and we shouldn't have really had to deal with that, but good that the result was good in the end.
Yes. And I know that, and this is something I need to kind of I put this back on my radar, but Charles, this is obviously, because you're in the UK, that whole story about Matt Hancock being nominated by Vera Songwe. So there was a lot of WhatsApp exchange about that. And Rachel had said that Amnesty was also thinking about putting out a statement. So we thought we'd collaborate with Global Justice Now, and Global Justice Now was doing so much press after that announcement was made. And then over the weekend, I think it was on the Sunday or early on the Monday, his appointment was taken back. I know that Fight Inequality Alliance has gone ahead and drafted something that they want to still put out, kind of saying that even though his appointment was pulled back, it shows a problem with the system. The fact that ECA or Songwe or whoever was pressured to nominate him. So I haven't looked at that. I received it a couple of days ago from Valentina at the People's Vaccine Alliance. So I will share that with the group. I'm not sure if they want comments still, or if they're just trying to get signatories to send it out. And Charles or Rachel, you haven't heard anything about the new appointee, have you?
No, nothing yet.
No.
Okay. All right. If you hear anything, please do let us know. So I want to take advantage of you, if you don't mind. Charles, thank you again for being willing to contribute a piece to that last report. Rachel, I don't know if you've seen these, but we, at one of our early meetings, we got a request to put together kind of an Africa brief, so a monthly situation on COVID-19, burden of disease, and vaccine rollout in Africa, and also include voices from Africa, whether op-eds or also media voices. There was a sense that most of the media that was being circulated was from the global north about COVID, and African outlets have also been trying to develop pieces, obviously, about the pandemic. So Rachel, I'm just going to share this quickly on the screen. I'm not sure if you, I know, Charles, you have given me feedback before, and you were kind enough to submit a piece for the last one. So I'm just going to share it here just as a probably tired of seeing this because Tian has to look at these, and I'm getting messages. Poor Suhail is stuck at a meeting and will try and join later if he can. So Rachel and Charles as well, now that we're at the third one of these, we try and keep them very short. We have had a request from the group that is supporting us to develop these, that they really would like to make sure that, it is useful to the civil society partners that we share it with. Tian, I don't know if there's anything that you want to add about this, but, it would be great to get a sense from you if you think so. As you can see here, we try and do cases, deaths, vaccine rollout, commentary from around the continent. So that's where we try and get 2 pieces from different regions for every month, and then the Africa media roundup, and also the final section, that asks like, so what, all the news that has come out in the last month, what does that mean for advocacy on the continent? So I just wanted to kind of, remind people that we would like this to be a very useful report. So any thoughts on how we can make it more useful, any sections that we have put in here that could be replaced, please do feel free to let us know. Rachel, do you have any thoughts about this? It's quite short. I don't know if you've had a chance to look at any of the recent ones that we've done.
I have, yeah. No, I find them really useful. So thank you for sharing those. Sorry for not providing any feedback. I know it's awful putting things together and then not hearing anything. I have found them useful, and I've certainly, I'm not sure which month it was, but I remember specifically, there were some trends being highlighted from Ethiopia and how that, the low vaccine rollout and the increased cases and how that was being impacted by the conflict was something that I just hadn't cottoned onto. So I found sort of that, that's one really specific issue that I wouldn't have picked up on if I hadn't seen it in there. No, I found it very useful, the way, particularly sort of the trends that you're highlighting in this piece, and the additional commentary. I've certainly shared commentary with our team and outside based on what you've pulled together. So yes, personally, I found it very useful.
Okay.
I don't have a suggestion on how to change it.
Okay, but, thank you. So if anything comes up, or there's even somebody you're working with that you think, oh gosh, this person is doing something really different or interesting or thoughtful, that it would be great to have them, it's a pretty short piece. We ask people to do 800 to 1200 words, so as you saw, they're not super long. So yeah, anybody who you think, sometimes when people are asked to do pieces, they think, oh gosh, like I don't have time to do writing this month, but it's really something quite short. So please, do let us know if there's somebody that you think of that you're working with that you think could contribute a piece. And Charles, I know you've said in the past that you have found it helpful. Is there anything like data trends or anything like that that you wish we would include that would make it more useful?
At the moment, without trying to make it sort of too dense and too heavy, sort of perhaps data gaps, what do we don't know, things like that. But I'm not sure if you can sort of capture that in a snapshot, but that might be useful, particularly if it sort of speaks to the inequality, the inequity we're seeing.
Okay, thank you. Tian, any thoughts from you?
I think, and also just to touch on what Charles was saying around gaps, I think a long-standing gap since the onset of the pandemic has been just lack of transparency and visibility in delivery schedules. So for example, we know between today and tomorrow, Ghana, Togo, Egypt, and Lesotho are receiving their AVAT deliveries. And so perhaps we can also craft a space within these reports to try and preempt some of these delivery figures that we have in advance. Because I think one of the key needs really from civil society is that we need to know what vaccines are coming when, and not really, get to know about this the week of or the day before. So I think that is one of our potential advocacy strengths, is being able to give a heads up to civil society in the countries that X amount of doses are coming to your country in 2 weeks' time, you know, for them to upscale or really intensify work around misinformation or anti-vaxxer sentiment, but also to build confidence so we can make sure that those doses get from the port into the arms.
Okay, great. Thank you. All right. And then the other one, obviously, that, you know, we send out every month that we also try and keep very brief. And the feedback that I have gotten from people is that, you know, they don't like to read long reports. So there is a preference to have, you know, a short report, and then that is linked to and let's see if I can do this in a way that you can see it, linked to the transcript. And that's another one that I'm just wondering how useful you all find the Africa meeting report. I mean, these we share on the website, as we do share the others as well. We share the Africa briefs on the website as well, so people can always go back to these. But the idea is to have a short report, you know, about what was discussed, what's upcoming, and to have then links to the section of the transcript. And we spend a lot of time on the transcript to kind of make sure that it's clear and clean. So hopefully, if there was something, and again, Rachel, Charles, I'm just putting you on the spot because now we have time to actually, we didn't get a chance to really talk about this last time, but just trying to make these documents as useful as possible as resources for people. You know, this sense of being able to go back to the transcript and see what was said. Is that something that you find useful, Rachel, or have you even had to do that yet in looking at these reports?
Sorry, I was just looking through the last one as you were asking me that question. And not especially, I mean, when I've been able to join, I tend to take quite a lot of notes, but for the meetings that we've missed, for sure it's useful to have this and to know who's doing what.
Okay, okay. Charles, any thoughts from you?
I think that could include, particularly if you're not at the meeting, just to catch up.
Okay. All right. So we'll keep doing it like this for now. And that way, you know, the transcript is quite detailed, as I said, and it's up on the website. And this, you know, we thought it would just be a quick overview, just to get a sense of what people were talking about and what people were working on. So let me stop sharing this now. And then I had pulled together some super brief slides. Let's see. I'm trying to, let's see, I don't want the outline view. Oh my gosh, my PowerPoint is being very unhappy with me today. What is going on today? Oh my goodness. Sorry about that. I just wanted to find my agenda and everything is, give me 1 second. Sorry about this. Today is like not the best day for technology. And Tian, as we're talking, no more people in the waiting room, yeah?
No, I see that hosting has been returned to you.
Oh gosh, all right. Well, I definitely don't see anybody else here, so. Okay, great. Let's see. If my PowerPoint is acting up, Tian, the view button does not want to show itself. It's very strange.
So you can email them to me and I can share from here.
Okay, let me do that. My PowerPoint.
Well, I think I can share from here. I should be able to. Yeah, my share function is working.
All right, let me send this to you quickly. So as I'm doing that, Rachel and Charles, the other things that we wanted to do today, I mean, the slides are very brief, just kind of, again, the most recent. So something that PVA is quite good at is, and if you follow PVA on their Twitter page, which I know, Charles, I've seen you retweeting. So I know that you do follow them on Twitter. They're very good. Their data section, and actually a Kenyan guy, Anthony, is really great at putting together what he calls killer facts on a regular basis. So those are actually quite good. Like every month, or actually every week, there's some sort of cool killer fact that he puts together and shares. So that I had a few of those, you know, sort of this idea of like comparing the number of booster shots given in the US and elsewhere to the number of vaccinations, you know, given all over Africa, you know, those kind of things. And if people want to use those for advocacy purposes, we thought that would be useful. And I also had gone through and shared kind of the key events that had taken place in the last month. So October was quite a busy month. And sorry, Tian, I'm having a real struggle here. So I'm going to try again to just open up and share it. This is very obnoxious. Sorry, friends. Tian, you know what I think while I'm messing around with this, I think since we really do want to get through, so I'll tell you what we wanted to talk about too, was I wanted to go through the slides, which is really sort of what the PVA has done in the last month. And for those of you who do follow the PVA on Twitter, you have many of those updates. And there are also some key upcoming dates that I wanted to share with you. So things that the PVA is working on through the Influentials group and through the Campaigns and Media group for the next month. But really, unfortunately, what we really wanted to dig into today, and we had set aside 30 minutes with Suhail from People's Vaccine Kenya, was to talk about the Africa Week of Action. So I think you were both at the last meeting. You might have heard mention of this. Suhail brought this up as an idea. You know, the People's Vaccine Alliance has had days of action targeting Germany, other weeks of action that have taken place around key events. And Suhail thought it would be a good idea to have a week of action around Africa. He wanted to have it in November, and I think we've convinced him that December would be better, more for planning purposes, just to give us more time, but also given the fact that November for the People's Vaccine Alliance is going to be very focused on targeting pharma, and there are already a lot of things happening this, you know, that are planned for November targeting pharma. So Suhail and I had a couple of interactions and a conversation yesterday, and he is fine and quite keen, and PV Kenya is happy to shift, you know, their planning to the first week of December. So between World AIDS Day and then December 8th. So December 8th is that anniversary that we've talked about over and over, you know, the first non-clinical trial vaccine, Pfizer shot that was given in the UK. That's a date, Charles, I know you've heard about this on the Campaigns and Media group, and Rachel, you might have heard mention of this, but that's a date when the People's Vaccine Alliance is hoping to launch in collaboration with the African Alliance and this kind of stories group that has been built out of the Campaigns and Media Working Group at PVA, this digital memorial wall. So we've started, we've developed a Google form and have started reaching out to people all around the world who have lost loved ones to COVID, gathering photos and short statements about each of those people. So you will also be receiving this Google form if you would like to share it with others and get them to share information, or if you unfortunately have also lost a loved one to COVID and are willing to share that person's info. So I think PVA is quite keen to do some media and other work around December 8th. December 14th is also a similar date in the US. And I don't know if anybody is familiar with this, but in the US, the first person to receive the non-clinical trial vaccine was a Jamaican American RN, a nurse. And she has apparently done quite a bit of travel in the Caribbean around vaccine access. So Charles, I don't know if you were on that last Campaigns and Media call when Will from Oxfam said he would try and follow up and see if anybody at Oxfam America could track her down and if she were willing to be kind of an influential for some of the PVA work. So December, I think, could be quite an interesting anniversary month in terms of looking back at the last year since vaccines have been rolled out. So I was hoping we could do a little bit of brainstorming today. And Tian, please feel free to chime in. But you know, the People's Vaccine Alliance is quite keen about this idea of the African Week of Action. We've talked about it at the Influentials group. And Rachel, I don't know if you're aware of all these different groups. I've mentioned them before. And I think that there are people from Amnesty on the Policy and Advocacy group. Are you part of the Policy and Advocacy group, Rachel?
I'm not, no, maybe I should be. Yes. The problem with Amnesty is so many different people doing different things, so I shall try and find out who's representing us on that.
Charles, do you know who's on you, because you sit in that group? Have you met any Amnesty people in that group?
I'm trying to remember the name. I can't remember, but I'll try and dig out an email. There's a meeting tomorrow. It's usually around 4 p.m. UK time. I'll see if there's been an email, and I'll try and forward that on.
Okay. And that, so, and Rachel, and when I send around the slides, and they're in the slides from last time as well, but you'll see this, but, you know, once people officially join the PVA, which as Amnesty is, you know, there is an option to join any of these working groups. So there's the campaigns in media group that has the stories group that has broken off, and the stories group is really developing stories from the global South, you know, so that video that you saw of Lois Chinkandu from Frontline AIDS, and others that have are in the process of being developed have come out of that stories group. So those are stories and videos that are really focused on individual people, not so much kind of the, you know, the 100-meter dash video that you might have seen, or, you know, the others that are coming out, but really stories focused on people. So that's the campaigns and media group. There's the policy and advocacy group that is also quite big, that does a lot of work, you know, kind of the briefs that you've seen that have recently come out have come out of the policy and advocacy group. And then there's also an influentials group, which is much smaller, I think, because people worry that if they don't know influential people, that they don't belong in that group. So that's a group that's trying to target, you know, high-level people. Like, they do a lot of work reaching out to Gordon Brown. They did a lot of work trying to get the Pope to make a statement, which he eventually did. So really kind of trying to tap in. There's this group called Club de Madrid that includes a lot of former heads of state, and, you know, so reaching out to those people. So all those letters that you've seen, sort of, you know, the letters signed to Joe Biden by Nobel leaders and former heads of state, all of that work has come out of the influentials group. Op-eds as well that you might have seen by former heads of state. Nabil Ahmed from Oxfam has done a lot of the op-ed drafting and presenting it to these high-level people and seeing if they're willing to sign on. So, you know, this idea of the Africa Week of Action has garnered some interest both in the campaigns and media group and in the influentials group. And the thinking is like, how can we get high-level, you know, influential Africans, whether they be ministers of health or other, you know, high-level spokespeople, to sign on to letters, to be willing to, you know, host a press conference, host an event of some sort. For the campaigns and media group, you know, there were questions about, you know, would the PVA Africa want to have some offline actions, you know, some more small demonstrations, develop some videos, you know, what is the interest? So I was hoping that we could brainstorm around this. There is a little bit of money set aside for these types of activities at PVA at the moment. As I've mentioned, and for the two of you who are on the larger PVA calls, you know that PVA is hoping to get more money soon. There has been talk of foundations, the Ford Foundation and Rockefeller Fund, providing some money to the PVA, which would mean that for next year, there would be money, kind of more money set aside for more activities that, you know, even organizations could apply for campaigns. But at the moment, there is a small amount of money set aside for things like weeks of action. So unfortunately, as I said, you know, Suhail has texted and said that he's stuck at a meeting with the ministry in Kenya, so he won't be able to join us. But I don't know if either of you have, and unfortunately Robert, who had registered for the meeting today, also was not able to join, looks like, but Christian Aid is also doing, and Rachel, I don't know if you work with Christian Aid at all, but they have quite a presence in East Africa, and there were some countries that he wanted to target in December as well. He had mentioned some countries, and I was hoping that he had mentioned them on the campaigns and media group, Charles, and I was hoping that he could expand a little bit here and let us know why those specific countries were targeted. I think he had mentioned Sierra Leone and maybe Burundi, a few countries that Christian Aid was focusing on for work and advocacy in December. So do either of you, you know of, Rachel, I guess the first question for you is, do you work with Christian Aid in East Africa at all?
I haven't been, no. But okay. I can reach out to them for sure.
Okay, and Robert is quite has been quite active in the past. You know, for our offline action targeting Germany, he was really you know, super motivated about that. So I know that he normally joins these groups. Charles, do you know of? Obviously, I know that you're in the UK, but you do work with a lot of people on the continent. Do you have any info on any activities that are taking place in December?
No, not specifically, no.
Okay, all right, so that was really what we wanted to talk about. And now I think this might finally be working. Let's see. All right, so sorry about that, friends. So as I said, we just wanted to show a little bit of data, which we just kind of remind people about every time we have these meetings, kind of comparing Africa to the rest of the continent, a snapshot of the boosters, and I've just had the agenda here. So yes, we wanted to review the report. I have some of the PVA achievements from the last month, and then some upcoming events, and wanted to do a deep dive on the Week of Action. And then Tian is going to take us through the Africa Manifesto. This was just a reminder for people of what the PVA is. And here, Rachel, so here are the various groups that I mentioned. So the Influentials group, Policy and Advocacy, that has a breakout group on stats, and that's the one that's run by Anthony Kamande out of Nairobi, that develops the killer facts and other kind of statements that are shared on the PVA group, and then the Campaigns and Media group, and then there is a breakout to a few other groups, including the Stories group. So just reminder to people of the strategic priorities of the PVA. And here I had just put together some little photos, and you'll get this when you see them. The links are in the notes, but kind of this right here, the Pfizer makes $1,600 per second on vaccine sales. So there are a lot of those killer facts that go out on the PVA social media feed, and you have photos here of the kind of memorial march that Global Justice Now ran in the UK. Different activities as well in South Africa and elsewhere pre the World Trade Organization meeting. So offline actions as well. So you'll see here up on the top left, that's another projection done by Global Justice Now at the Tory meeting in the UK. So those activities keep going. And then I hope you all saw there was the big report that came out yesterday, and the link will be included in the presentation, or last week actually, the report about the broken promises by pharma and rich countries. And then there's also Public Citizen, which is a very active member of the PVA that has released a report specific to Pfizer. And then down on the bottom right here is one of just the campaign materials. Have you all seen this, this race video that has been going around? This is sort of the 100-meter dash with the different runners representing different countries.
Yeah, very powerful.
Yeah, okay. So yeah, so wanted to talk about some upcoming dates. And again, I will be sharing these. Robert had mentioned the Kusi Ideas Festival, which is taking place in Ghana in December, but their website for 2021 has not been shared yet. And I don't know if, do either of you, Tian and I were not familiar with the Kusi Ideas Festival. Were either of you familiar with that? Rachel, Charles?
No, not familiar with it at all.
No, thank you.
Yeah, I checked the website. It apparently was started by Kagame 2 years ago. Last year had quite high participation. I think the first one was in Kigali, the second one was in Kisumu, and Robert has said that the third one this year will be in Accra. And quite high level participation, from heads of state and ministers. But unfortunately, when I went to the website, there was only the website from last year and not the website for 2021. But Robert had thought that that would be a good place to have some panels on vaccine equity. So we'll just keep eyes peeled for that. And if you hear about that, please do let us know. Tian, I'm going to hand over to you. I think if we can have Charles and Rachel have a look at the manifesto in its current form, that might be quite helpful. And then we can do that final push of wrapping the manifesto up.
Can I jump in just before we move on to that? In terms of events coming up in November, one that I've been thinking about is the African Commission on Human and People's Rights has got a session coming up from the 15th of November, sort of 10 days of public session. And they've been, they've said some quite important statements around COVID and human rights, a bit on vaccines, but I'm wondering if that is an area that any of the members are working on, if there'd be interest in perhaps organising an event around it, or maybe doing advocacy and lobbying to try and get a resolution out of the Commission on access to vaccines and what a core human rights issue this is for the continent right now. That's something I've been mulling over at initial stages, that a bit of interest in that, and was interested to know if anyone else has tried engaging them on the access to vaccines up to now, if it's worked, if anyone else would be interested in pursuing that as an option in November.
I mean, I think it definitely sounds interesting to me, and there's been quite a bit of talk about this being a human rights crisis. So I think that's a good fit. Charles or Tian, any thoughts from you? Oh.
Nothing immediately comes to mind. I'll dig into it a little bit more and take a look.
Okay. And Rachel, if you have a link handy or any sort of information handy, can you share it in the chat? And then we can also share it with the email that I send out with the slides later today.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll share with you a link on the session and also some of what they've done on the right to health, kind of touching on COVID up to now. So, yeah,
okay. That would be great. Tian, is this something that the African Union is involved in any way?
Sorry, Maaza, the line is cutting in and out.
Okay, sorry about that. I was just asking for this African Commission meeting on human rights on the 15th of November. Is that anything that the Africa CDC has? Have you heard any talk about this on that level?
Yes, nothing that we've had on our radar. I think a lot of the focus now is going towards the public health conference that is being put together currently by CDC and its partners.
Okay, and so that's one that we should add as well. Yeah, so, and just remind me the dates of the public health conference are?
I'll confirm with you now, give me a sec.
Okay, be great to add that as well. Yeah, because I do, these dates that we have here, aside from, so we do have the 1-year anniversary of the launch of the J&J trial in South Africa on the 6th of November. And that's something that we had on our radar to kind of keep in mind if the vaccine rollout, especially J&J focused, was terrible, still on November 6th. And Tian, I don't know, what you think if we would be sort of putting the scientists or the people, who were involved in this kind of the research on blast, if we say, look, you all started this trial a year ago and still, there are only X number of vaccines rolled out. So I don't know if that's something that we still want to do. We have that on our radar. But other than that, many of the dates are the ones from the global level. So it is important to keep adding African dates here as well. So our calendar focuses on the African dates. So Tian, I mean, do you think November 6th is coming up? Do you think we want to do something around J&J and how dismal the rollout has been a year after the trial started?
I think we absolutely should. I mean, I think because there was also a lot of goodwill, wasn't there? You did quite a few podcasts with Linda Gale, who led the trial, and there was some level of goodwill towards J&J at the outset, in terms of what this, vaccine meant, especially in hard to reach contexts. Even though we've tried to debunk the myth, that cold chain is a challenge. There are, vaccines like J&J's, I think, have a special place in terms of accessibility and uptake. And so I do think we should do something around accountability, even if it's a follow-up with Linda Gale. Maybe not a podcast, maybe even just a Zoom conversation, give us an update. Where are you? Because these are scientists who gave a significant portion of their lives to getting this vaccine here. And if we're still struggling with doses, I mean, if you look at the Avat doses, it's really, really tragic. So between COVAX and Avat, it's drip, drip. We're seeing just spectacularly ridiculous amounts. We're seeing hundreds of thousands of vaccines, barely making a dent. And at least in my talks with, J&J, they seem to be thinking around how to generate demand. But of course, our question that remains is, how are we generating demand in the absence of supply? So I think that's certainly a moment. In terms of the conference, that's the 14th to the 16th of December. I posted the link in the chat for some strange reason. It's in French.
Well, I see, Charles, you've posted it in English, and Charles has posted it in French, and Tiana's posted it in French.
Oh, yes, thank you, Charles.
Yes, Rachel,
yes.
I hope you post it in Portuguese, and then we'll have all our bases covered. Okay, so Tian, I like the idea of, and I wonder, so I don't know if Rachel and Charles, you've seen, there's been this series, and I'll share it as well with the email I send out later today, but Health Justice Initiative, African Alliance, and the People's Health Movement have been collaborating on a series of 3 webinars focused on vaccine rollout on the continent. So the first one was Greed. The second one is Divides, which is taking place this week, led by PHM. So that's kind of divides within countries, whether we're talking migration issues or inequity within a country or gender issues that are affecting rollout. So they've been sharing that, and we'll share it as well. But then the third one, which is end of November, which I thought would also be a nice lead into an Africa Week of Action, was focused on African solidarity. So, and I wonder, and Tian, maybe you and I can talk about this offline as we think, because we've been asked then to lead the one on African solidarity, still under the umbrella of HJI, PHM, and African Alliance, but take the lead in terms of inviting speakers and making sure the context is relevant. So do you think it would be worth, given all that goodwill about the research, and as you said, Professor Linda Gale Becker did have, such optimism about J&J. So maybe we can talk about that offline. And, Charles and Rachel, if you have some speakers as well that you think would be great for this, webinar on African solidarity, we've been brainstorming a little bit on, whether we want to ask the head of WHO Afro, who's super busy. There's also Dr. Alakija from the African Vaccine Delivery Alliance, but anybody else who comes to mind in terms of African solidarity. So Tian, I guess the first question, and if it sort of takes a little bit more strategizing, we can talk about it offline, but we haven't had very many researchers in these discussions on COVID-19 vaccine access. And I wonder if having kind of a researcher like Linda Gale, who can explain and is kind of very, she's very relatable, even though she's a scientist, she's kind of like, she knows how to talk to lay people, maybe her perspective as a researcher who had so much goodwill. And, or do you think that would be, she'd sort of be putting herself in a difficult situation if she were to come forward and speak about how the goodwill has sort of not materialized?
I think she might not characterize it in that way, but I certainly think that, the sentiment is there. I think all of these researchers who are putting their time and effort, at least, they say that they're doing this for eventual access. This is something we've held them to account for, the last 15 years, especially when it came to HIV vaccine research. So the understanding is that they're doing this to ensure access. But of course, I guess it's up to us to indeed push them to make sure that's just not words, but they actually call out the farmer who has invested millions as well in their research to actually ensure it's meaningful, because this does have implications for future research, for HIV research. What does it mean when our countries, institutions in Africa are putting all of this work towards developing these products, which in the end come to, almost nothing when it comes to access by the communities in which research happened? So I certainly think at the very least we should approach and make the ask. And whether she does it one-on-one, with you as a recorded conversation that we can post online, or at our next meeting of PVA Africa, then yeah, but I certainly think the reach out is worth it. Okay.
And Charles, Rachel, any thought about either of those questions? One, for the solidarity discussion, any good, speakers, or you can obviously think about it and let us know later. And secondly, this idea of kind of doing a statement or something around that 1-year anniversary of the J&J trial, which, as Tian said, there was so much excitement about, given that it was a 1-dose vaccine and it's supposedly sort of perfect for Africa.
I think on the question of solidarity, it would be good to highlight, you were talking about researchers, for example, the WHO setting up or sort of contracting a startup essentially to sort of try and remake the mRNA vaccine. I can't remember. I found the name the other day of the researcher involved, and I can dig that out and see if that works, because I think it's good to highlight, even though there's gross inequality around all this, I think Africa has been sort of stepping up where it can be to sort of try and advance. And then the second thing, I think a think piece or would be good to have around that week of action. So something sort of nicely well written about, not just about sort of where we are now, but sort of what needs to happen in the future again. So I think that's a good idea, and I'm happy to help with that as well.
Excellent. Thank you. Rachel, any thoughts from you on either of those questions, the speakers for the Solidarity session or anything around this J&J 1-year anniversary?
No, agreed that I think the 1-year anniversary would be a really important moment to mark, and it's certainly something that Amnesty globally, and you're probably aware of this, we're running a campaign on the 100 days countdown to the end of the year, and sort of pulling out a lot of these similar, I don't think that's one of the anniversary dates we're particularly focusing on, but we're doing a sort of every 25 days and focusing on when each of the vaccines were announced as well. So absolutely see it within the same logic of that. In terms of solidarity, I mean, I suppose, I haven't particularly followed, so I guess it depends on if you're specifically looking for scientists. No, I don't have someone, but there's someone in mind that I've been thinking about recently, who's the UN independent expert on the promotion of a democratic and equitable international order, which is a very long title, but I don't know if you know Livingstone Sewanyana, who's a long-time Ugandan civil society organizer, set up the main human rights organization there, and he's been very outspoken in his role as independent expert on essentially the failures of multilateralism around the COVID pandemic and the rollout of vaccines specifically. I'll send you the statement he made last week, but he's someone I was thinking could be, you know, an interesting voice that straddles several different spaces, you know, that international human rights council space, but also coming from a very strong background of activism from the continent as well. Could be someone interesting.
Okay, fantastic. Please do send. No, I'm not familiar with him at all. Excellent. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. Okay, and yes, by the way, Rachel, that report was amazing, the Amnesty report. It was really, really good. So thank you for all the work that was done on that. Okay, so unless there are any other dates, and thank you for sharing these links, if there are not any other dates, I think, Tian, we can probably finish early. We can spend a few minutes just walking people, Rachel and Charles, through the manifesto. And I don't know, Rachel or Charles, if you have seen this at all, but we had been working on this and getting comments from people a few months ago. It kind of went on the back burner, but now we're at a point where we realize it's important to get it, you know, finalized and up on the website and get people signing onto it. So Tian, I will let you, I think you have the ability to share. And if you don't, let me know and I can kick that over to you. But I think it would be great to get feedback from Charles and Rachel.
Sure, thanks, Maaza. I know we only have a few minutes left, so I will try to keep it brief.
I mean, in theory, Tian, the meeting is planned until 30 minutes after the hour, but I think we will finish early today because we had planned a 90-minute meeting.
Great. Okay, so that is the document that we've called a charter. In this document, we basically got a breakdown of people who have made comments in thus far. The intention of the document really at the outset was to capture the current moment in the African response, but situated in the historical context. So we've looked at a preamble. In putting together this preamble, we've also considered what has been contained in the African Charter on Human and People's Rights. So we've taken some inspiration from there as well, but we've really tried to capture some of the current contemporary issues around health access, around rights, around how the pandemic has impacted us in this preamble. We've then structured the rest of the document in terms of key thematic areas where we offer a narrative that attempts to capture the current moment of that thematic area, as well as breaking it down into some really key position, / action advocacy points, where we solidify what that context means to us right now in the continent. So we've done that for accountability. We've done that for vaccines in general. In the position points that we focus specifically on COVID-19 vaccines, but of course the context and the framing of the document will have resonance regardless of the disease area. We then also moved on to research and development, which still needs a bit more work. And then we've looked at manufacturing, which we felt was important considering the current narrative around Africa's capacity and current work that we're doing to really strengthen and accelerate manufacturing capacity where it exists and build it urgently where it doesn't. We've included a section on access as well that has really brought us to this point based on the last, or at least the initial 12 months of the pandemic, where a lot of the focus was really on research and development for vaccines and how that is evolved now to very urgent access position points. And then we've also looked at hesitancy and misinformation, which we as the African Alliance and some of our partners have published quite a bit on several op-eds. We did one in Project Syndicate called Is It Vaccine Hesitancy, or is it racism, or is it structural racism? And we've just completed 2 op-eds in the last 2 weeks as well, looking at how misinformation fuels farmers' pushback on why they are complicit in sustaining the pandemic, but also looking at how, as a continent, we have severe data gaps in terms of how we're counting the cost and the impact of COVID, ranging from how we count deaths, the excess deaths, to some of the testing models. Then we looked at a broader section on strengthening access to quality of an investment in public health systems for the pandemic and the next. And of course, the thinking around there is really saying, what does this mean for building community confidence, really, in addition to other stakeholders? But in our minds, we've really seen that part of what is fueling reluctance, perhaps, of communities to fully embrace vaccines when and if these sporadic supplies come through is a broader trust issue, and that trust issue is located within the public health system. How do we build community confidence in the public health system while simultaneously advocating for increased resourcing and strengthening of the public health system as a structure in many of our countries? And then, of course, a document like this would not be complete without touching on what does regional leadership mean. So as we hold COVAX, AVAT, or at least COVAX, and governments like the US, the UK, Norway, et cetera, to account, what does accountability look like in our local context? So we've included a section there on regional leadership, which still needs to be fleshed out, and Maaza will coordinate a strong closing piece compiled by our colleagues across the global south. So we've got another week or so for final inputs into this document. And the intention is by next week to share this document with the technical advisor who does a lot of work with the PVA. I'm sure you all know Moga, is to approach and get Moga to do a final read through and then send it for a final edit. And like Maaza said, put it on the PVA page, the PVA Africa page, on the African Alliance website, and really get people to start signing up on it, but also including resources there that civil society can use to amplify pieces of this charter, as well as the charter as a whole. So that's from me, Maaza.
Great, thank you so much, Tian. So it would be great, Charles and Rachel, to see if you have any initial thoughts, but just welcome, Robert. Hi, Robert. We can't hear you, but feel free to say hi if you would like. And I was talking about you to Rachel from Amnesty and asking if you all knew each other or worked together. So I'm glad he was able to join, Rachel, so you can at least touch base here.
Hi, everyone. Nice to meet you, Rachel. I'm sure we'll be able to pick up. Let me not disrupt the meeting.
Okay. So Robert, Tian, we're just on the last point of the agenda, and Tian had taken us through the current version. And that was, I think, Robert, before you had started joining these calls, but we had agreed to work on this Africa-wide charter on COVID. So we're sort of at the final stages of that. And we're at the final draft version and have about a week or so to get additional comments. And Tian was just saying that we will then be running it by the senior policy advisor at the People's Vaccine Alliance and just finalizing it. So Charles and Rachel, obviously you will be able to look at it sort of in more detail. I think we might put it back on Google Docs. Yeah, Tian, that might be the easiest way for us to just share around the link and have people, put in their comments that way. But any initial thoughts from you, concerns, Rachel or Charles?
None at the moment, no, but it looks good and comprehensive. So looking forward to reading it in more detail.
Okay, Rachel, any thoughts, concerns from you?
Not having read it in detail, but as Charles said, looks very comprehensive. I can't think of anything any area that's been missed out. I think you mentioned about the need for transparency as well, what our governments are doing. That'd be important to include. But I can also see this being quite a useful what's the word? Okay, I can't remember my English right now. But I can see it being a useful document that we can use in advocacy, obviously, as well, and particularly seeing all those mentions of the African Charter and thinking about engaging the Commission. I can see it being a really useful basis for our advocacy with them. Okay, fantastic. So we will put it back on Google Docs with sort of, the dates that Tian has mentioned. And yeah, it would be wonderful to get this finalized soon. And Robert, obviously you'll have a chance to see it as well if you have not already. It's been up on Google Docs for a little while. But Robert, we were going to wrap up, but since you're here, maybe I'll put you on the spot. I had mentioned that you had briefly, right before you signed off on Campaigns and Media Group, had talked about some African countries that Christian Aid was targeting for some advocacy coming up soon. We had talked briefly, and maybe Robert, you and I can touch base afterwards, if you don't mind, and I can brief you on, so Rachel and Charles, Robert was on the call when Suhail had brought up the idea of the Africa Week of Action last month. And Robert and I think we're on the same page that we had agreed that December would sort of be preferable. Robert, I think Suhail has agreed to that with his team at People's Vaccine Kenya. Unfortunately, he was not able to join us today. We thought we would do some kind of more in-depth brainstorming around the Week of Action. So I will follow up with you after the call, Robert, to tell you what we spoke about today here. But could you give us kind of like a quick 3-minute, what is Christian Aid? It seemed like you had a lot of interesting things planned with a few select African countries coming up in the next month or so.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Maaza. Not putting me on the spot at all. This is some work that we had been planning on doing at Christian Aid. We're focusing on Sierra Leone, Kenya, Burundi, and Zimbabwe. We're looking at barriers to access to vaccines, but we're also trying to track the financing that has gone to vaccine acquisition by these countries. One of the things that we want to sort of focus on is this, front-facing public campaign where we're trying to get, agency around the issue. So building and mobilizing within these countries to ensure that we have this, critical mass that is talking about the vaccine equity at the country level. We want to try and see how we can link this with both regional and global advocacy. So one of the things, for example, that we want to develop at the global level is this vaccine equity index that is just going to look at things like what are the commitments or promises that G7, G20 countries have been able to make, what have they been able to deliver so far, and how is that impacting in terms of global health in respect to their own vaccination rates. I mean, it builds up on the report that came out I think last week on broken promises, because I was just looking at that report and I was just thinking about, for example, the UK had only met about 9.6% of its targets. So this is just some of the work that I'm hoping we'll be able to build up on that. And then just lastly, the work that Tian is talking about sounds very interesting, and it's a resource. One of the things that we're keen on is sharing some of the PVA resources with countries. So everything from the video that the race that's looking at the inequality, but also which is a visual guide, and we're hoping to run it at the Pan-Africa level during the Kusi Ideas Festival, which is in early December. But we're also thinking something like an African Charter on vaccine equity would be fantastic as a basis or a guideline for advocacy in country. Thank you. I hope that's that's just below 3 minutes.
That's super helpful. Thank you, Robert. I mean, I think it would be great to know, those 4 countries that you picked, is it because Christian Aid already has relationships there, or is it something about, the level of their rollout, so it'd be great if you are able to share that. And secondly, the Kusi Ideas Festival, I looked for their most recent website and couldn't find it. That was sort of our pitch as well, to Suhail about shifting the week of action to December. There is this Kusi Ideas Festival, and that you had a connection. I know that Peter and Joab, your colleague, and then Peter as well, Joab's former colleague, had said that they had been included last time. But yeah, I couldn't find a recent a website for this year. But yes, I mean, obviously, anything that we can do to share People's Vaccine Alliance sort of products at that level would be great, or even getting a session or a webinar or something at the Kusi Ideas Festival. So if you have any recent information about Kusi, please let us know. And 2, just quickly, is there a reason why those 4 countries were selected?
Yeah, so let me start with Kusi. One, I'll put you in touch with Nation Media. So they are developing the final sort of products for the December meeting, and I'm in touch directly with the organizers. And one of the things that we're trying to do is get a panel discussion. It will be a physical meeting that will also be televised or stream. So I'm hoping that we can actually attend the meeting in December. We do have some resources for it, so it's something that if the PVA had a few material that you really wanted to push, that would be fantastic, because I think they already have confirmation of maybe 3 or 4 presidents, including the president of Ghana, who would be attending. So again, happy to put you in touch and to share like the latest document. That being said, on the 4 countries that Christian Aid has chosen, one, yes, there's an intrinsic sort of bias, because these are countries that Christian Aid works in: Sierra Leone, Kenya, Burundi, and Zim. But these countries actually have a very interesting mix in terms of their vaccines acquisition. One, Sierra Leone is coming off of the Ebola pandemic, and they had managed to support community health systems that have sort of bolstered their ability to respond to pandemics. And what we're looking at is how have some of those community health systems, how can they be used during this during this COVID-19 pandemic? The idea is to tap into indigenous knowledge and to be able to showcase that as one of the viable options of addressing COVID-19. Kenya is also interesting, because Kenya is one of the few countries on the continent that is rolling out, I think, 5 different vaccines. So everything from Sputnik, Sinovac, Moderna, J&J, and AstraZeneca. And it's almost a position of privilege to see an African country that has access to more than 1 vaccine or more than 2 vaccines. So we wanted also to just present that picture as well. And then Burundi is an interesting one, because Burundi had been a skeptic in the beginning of this pandemic. And the interesting thing with Burundi is the fact that they're going through this transition where it's still almost taboo to talk about the issues with vaccine rollout, but following the passing of the president, it became something like a policy shift, where conversations are being held, but they're also being driven, for example, by UNICEF in the country. And then lastly, Zimbabwe presents it's such an interesting case, because if you look at the official data from the World Data Portal, it shows Zimbabwe's numbers as being fairly low, and that's because I think they're just making reference to your big pharma. But the interesting thing is that if you, with our colleagues in Zimbabwe, they are actually saying that, look, we actually have higher numbers because we are getting a large quantity of the Sinovacs from China. So that's one of the cases we wanted to present in terms of what are the alternatives to the big pharma that we talk to, and how does that have an impact on the continent, and what is that story. So it's just an interesting sort of mix of trying to showcase the different realities and the contextual issues of within the continent. Thanks.
Okay, thank you so much, Robert. Much appreciated. And Tian, I will touch base with Robert after this. Robert, if you have time, I'll give you a quick call immediately after this to brief you on what else we had discussed. But since you've already gone pretty far with these 4 countries, it sounds like, and you're thinking, Tian, maybe we can discuss, we had, there was some interest in maybe targeting the countries with the lowest vaccine rollout so far, for the week of action. But if you have already gone quite forward at Christian Aid in thinking about this and are trying to present kind of a variety of different countries that are in different situations. So Tian, why don't I touch base with Robert, and then I'll circle back with you, because Robert, anyway, I don't want to rehash what we've spoken about, but I'll touch base with you separately. But it all sounds super interesting, and I hope that we can get something done at the Kusi Ideas Festival, because it seems like a great opportunity for that week, which could be a great week to do a lot of pushing and advocacy, given that, the 1-year anniversary and yeah, a lot of things happening that week that we can sort of capitalize on, I think. So Robert, if you have time, I'll give you a WhatsApp call immediately after, but I think we're at a 1/4 the hour. Robert and, Rachel and Charles, I'll give you the final words, since you are our stalwarts who were here throughout this whole meeting and arrived on time at a very, very poorly attended meeting today. So apologies about that. And I'll also work on making sure people get lots of reminders. And, unfortunately, it's not an in-person meeting, so you can't offer like good Ethiopian coffee or treats or something for people to attend. But last words from you, Charles or Rachel, about what we've discussed today and any follow-up. No. Okay, no final words. So I think we can wrap it up. I will send around the slides to everybody and the links that have been shared. Robert, I hope you don't mind. I'm going to give you a quick call immediately after this, because we have the campaigns and media group starting as well. So it'd be great to just touch base with you. And other than that, thank you so much, everyone. Tian, any last shout from you?
Nope. Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Maaza.
Okay. Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Take care, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks, Maaza. Bye.